he's been working on the plan and the vision for all of that. And then lastly, we have Steve Heyer, who just is joining us. He's founder of the first National Advocacy Conference, and he's also a judge advisor, so he has to be sneaking in and out as he goes. But he's the one who really started the idea of the National Advocacy Conference, and then we'll talk about that too. And then also special thanks to Carrie Maxwell, who's here. She's really helping us out a lot with like the first connection planning, the huge levels of outreach and all of that. So without further ado, we have Don Bossy to talk about First Advocacy.
We don't need to use the mic, right? We can all hear. So I want to take the opportunity actually to thank everyone. I know here at Championship there's a million things going on, your teams, your friends, all that kind of stuff. And so, you could do anything, but we really, really appreciate the fact that you're here and thinking about sort of how do we advocate for making programs like FIRST more available, more accessible to more kids. And really, kind of that's sort of our passion, and we appreciate you all being sort of volunteer advocates with us. So really, kind of when it comes to advocacy, our goal is always really simple. So we're not asking for support for FIRST or money for FIRST as an organization. What we're very simply asking for is how do we get elected leaders in different government positions, whether it's at a national level, at a state level, at a regional level, or maybe even at your superintendent and school district level, where I took this job, is that if you look here in the United States, sort of how education funding happens, you'd be surprised how little of that is actually at the national or federal level, and how it's really something that, especially in a budget control perspective, is much more driven at the state and local level. But FIRST is a small organization, headcount-wise. So as an organization, we're maybe about 100, 150 people, but we're truly what I call an army of about 250,000 folks. Who, well, that's only the adults. Then add in the kids, so 750,000 folks. And so, kind of our mentality is, how do we do stuff at the federal level that kind of sets the groundwork for all of you to do amazing things at the state and local level? And so we'll talk about that. Our emphasis was really on kind of creating or making a couple important strategic moves kind of at the national level, creating templates and other types of things, sharing best practices, but then really enabling all of you to go out and advocate at both the state and local level. And we always say this, and I'm sure someday I'll get in trouble for saying this, but our kids are our best salespeople. I mean, your charm, your poison, all the good things you learned at FIRST are really, they come in really handy when you're talking to legislators. So what you're learning here is very effective in that regard, and you talking to your legislatures is way more effective than me doing. So as I mentioned, we really kind of focus on a few key things at the national level that we actually hope sort of help trickle down and make your lives easier at the state and local level. And there's sort of 4 different areas, 4 different programs where there's opportunity at the federal level. And we've actually put a fair amount of time over the last 5 years kind of building the groundwork. And that's what Jim Berger, our friend in Washington, D.C. does. So those 4 things, 2 of them come in the federal legislation that supports elementary and secondary education. It's called the Every Student Succeeds Act. It gets really confusing because if you think of elementary and secondary education, that's ESEA, but then the act is the ESSA. So whenever you hear a lot of E's, S's, and A's, just think of it as K through 12 schools. And within that, there's 2 titles, 2 sections. Title IV Part A is this Every Student Succeeds Act, and Jim will talk about it. But that actually makes a pretty good chunk now of federal funding available. But it trickles down. It goes down to states by a formula, and then school districts have to apply for it. So what did it get bumped up to this year? 1.1 billion. So it actually tripled. It's about to triple, right? Is that? Okay. So he'll tell you all this stuff, but there is now 3 times as much federal money available as there was last year, but schools and states have to ask for it. Now, what I'll tell you is in that, and Jim will tell you more, there's kind of an everything under the sun that's an enrichment program. So we have to help guide their thinking into making sure that that money goes towards the smartest investment, right? Because it's our tax dollars that this money's going to, so we want to make sure it goes to the smartest investment. We care, it's our money. But the beauty of it is, in that 3 times the size pot now, very clearly sort of after-school STEM engagement programs like robotics competitions are 100% called out. And it very much says this is about making, giving access to kids to programs like this. So there's money, it's 3 times as big, but schools and states have to ask for it, and they have to ask for it very specifically for this type of activity. So if you remember nothing else I said, just remember that. There's also these 21st Century Community Learning Centers, which are in Title I schools, so less privileged schools, that sort of this type of funding can come into. We also do take advantage of the fact that there's this organization called the Corporation for National Community Service, where it doesn't have to be young people, typically it's young people, could be anybody, can volunteer a year of service. It's sort of like the domestic Peace Corps, where you can volunteer a year of service to your country, serving domestically, and sort of help sort of break down the barriers to poverty. And FIRST was the first national deployment of VISTA, so for several years now we've actually had 50 VISTA Corps members throughout, dispersed throughout the country. So it's another place where we get great federal support. And then increasingly we're looking at sort of the Perkins Act, which covers the career and tech ed, as another possible funding avenue. And one thing that gets confusing is this very specifically calls out kind of 8 national programs. It also gives every single state the right to decide what programs they want to support in their state. And Georgia is the first state in the country that at a state level said, well, we want FIRST robotics programs to be part of this, our state level career and tech ed. And I think, Marie, you told me North Carolina is about to do that as well. Close. I know it's the last mile sometimes can be the greatest. So there really are a number of different federal programs, and that's where Jim really spends his time, us trying to make these so that they're kind of fertile ground. But we need all of your support, sort of turning that fertile ground into rich crops. And so we do have this, and I keep calling Jim a lobbyist. It sounds awful. He's just a great friend of FIRST, and it comes from his heart. He really has seen the impact that FIRST has. And honestly, the great thing when we go to Washington or we go to any state capital and talk to legislators about this is what they want to do. They just don't always know that this is what they want to do, right? I mean, I would be challenged to find an elected leader that wouldn't say, I want to, invest in our kids, I want to invest in education, I want to invest in our workforce, I want our state, our country to be more competitive. It's something that's actually universally agreed to. And it's a totally bipartisan, Republicans, Democrats all agree. We're the easiest thing on earth to agree on. Where they sometimes differ is where the money comes from and who does it. But even there, I think they're realizing that this is such a good return on investment that where there's a will, there's a way. So Jim helps us sort of in DC. And then, as you heard mentioned, another thing that I can't say enough good about, and I know many people in the room have attended, every June, and I should mention you're an alum, so you started this when you were a student, right? It's not some idea you had as an adult. It was actually something that you and Team Rush, actually I think it's what got you the Chairman's Award my first year in FIRST, is organizing this National Advocacy Conference that takes place in Washington, D.C. in June. And it's really amazing. It's 2 fun days. It's kind of like your government class meets robotics. So you literally come and learn, all about sort of how Washington works and how bills become laws and all that kind of stuff. But you kind of get to learn on one day and then practice the next day. And so they really work with you to help team members get out and meet your elected leaders, your representatives in Washington, and advocate for what you believe in. It's a fantastic conference. I can't say enough about it. And really kudos to Cameron and Steve and the folks who put that on. Yep, question. So, believe it or not, this, what we described here, didn't exist before December of 2015. So, yeah, so it's typically around stuff like STEM education, education in general. And it's not always about sort of just getting the bill into law. And so now we have law that says this is an approved use of this money. So now every year the question becomes, well, does Congress allocate $1 or does Congress allocate $1 billion? And we can all do a lot more with $1 billion than we can with 1 or 0. And so today, what I would say, a lot of what, so even though this is, you could call it done, check, we've got it, it's every year it's a battle of, how much money are you going to put behind it, and what are some of the approved uses. So even though some of these things you could say are done, there's still work to be done. And like I think the Perkins Act might be something that they're going to be looking at pretty severely to overhaul potentially in the near future. So maybe taking that away from a little bit of what it was 20 years ago to what it should be for the next 20 years is another great opportunity. So, and there's, as I said, even on the budget front, there's huge battles between what the president proposes and what different people in Congress. So it's a terrific opportunity for you to lend your voice to what you think is the most valuable. Great question. Like I said, so we do that at the national level, but the truth is most funding decisions levels are made at the state and local level. We don't have enough resources to cover each of the 50 states, so we'll be there to help you. If you say, Don, Carrie, Jim, anybody, we've got a meeting with our governor, or we've got a meeting with, this other important person, we'll give you whatever we can give you the support. We'll even come out and help you if our presence would be helpful. But we don't have enough to drive this kind of, we basically have enough resources to drive it in Washington and to support you guys driving it in each of your 50 states and your 1,000 local communities, thousands of local communities. So that's where really kind of this is a force multiplier, and you're all more charming than we are anyways. So here's just an example where Wisconsin governor happened to sign a bill supporting funding for schools at the first robotics competition in Wisconsin a couple of years ago. So, there's your role model. If you want to say, what should I do? I'm like, well, get your governor to sign a big bill, making it first available to every kid in your state at your local competition. In case you want the data, this is actually an eye chart, and I apologize, but it does show you for every state, U.S. territory, how many teams of each type, first language junior, first language perspective, first robotics competition, exist in those states this season. Total number of teams, estimated total number of students, and what percentage of all kids between ages 6 and 18 in the state participate. I think the reason I threw this in, and I think it's interesting, so we kind of highlighted either where a state has more than 10,000 students participating, or where we have more than 1% of all the kids ages 6 to 18. And I really apologize, I'm as blind as a bat, so I can barely read here, and I know it's probably impossible to read from the back. But what I will say is the states where we have, a lot of where the yellow is honestly states where we have gotten real state support for supporting FIRST and for making it available. Question?
Is it possible to get copies of these by
Yes, absolutely. There's nothing super secret here. And so the other thing that we did this year is we realized this is so important, and there's so much opportunity that I think there's amazing best practices. And Jim, our good friend in Washington, came up to me this morning. He's like, he shows me. He's like, do you know about this team in Texas? And I'm like, what team in Texas? Like, oh, a lot of teams in Texas. So he pulls it out. He's like, 2468. And I'm like, oh, I know them very well. They're awesome. And he's like, look at what they're doing here. He's like, they put on a Texas Advocacy Conference. So the amazing thing is you all are helping to spread best practices. And so we feel our mission is to figure out how do we learn from what you're doing, how do you learn from what we're doing, and how do we cross-pollinate and share that across all FIRST. So this year we hired a wonderful FIRST alum, Carrie Maxwell. Stand up, Carrie, beat you. So she's a FIRST alum. She's actually from a chairman's winning the bomb squad from Arkansas. She grew up in Mountain Home, Arkansas. She actually has degrees in sort of health policy and such. And she's been a great friend of FIRST for many, many years, longer than you would guess from looking at her. And so she's really helping us sort of trying to help move the advocacy forward. And not just the advocacy part, but the other part of her job is alliances. Like what other organizations should we partner with, that also can help move kind of advocacy forward. So Carrie's a new resource at the headquarters level, but really, again, our goal is to figure out how to empower the amazing community we have, which is very, very effective. And then the other thing that we've kind of started, but we haven't really started, and we have to get behind it, is also understanding that there's a lot of folks in FIRST that are interested in advocacy. How do I help make positive change for what I believe in? And so trying to create what we call our fan network, our FIRST Advocacy Network. And I think we've got about 300 folks signed up on the email list, but I don't think we've sent them anything. So you may not even know you're on the list. I assure you we're not spamming you, but we do have names. And really start to get that as a forum to help sort of propel forth the ability to share best practices and to keep you all informed. So it's not just sort of one session here at Championship and another session in June, but to really keep this as sort of an ongoing and on-growing dialogue. So I'm excited about it. I think it's awesome what you're all doing. I truly, truly appreciate the fact that that you care enough to make this part of what you think about on a daily basis. And with that, we did try and sort of come up with some guidelines, and others can talk about it more. But these were sort of our suggestions of what you can do within your state. All the way from getting your governor. Actually, anybody from Wyoming? Woohoo! Your governor's here. I'm meeting with him later today. I'm excited about that. I think he comes every year. I think maybe his daughter was on the team, I heard, or something like that.
Something like that.
So, actually, that's the secret sauce. If your governor has kids that are K through 12, get the kids on a FIRST team. That is easy, makes your life so much easier. Even if you have to go start a team in her or his backyard, it'll just work. But it really helps to get senior elected leaders on board, encourage corporations and business. So elected leaders listen a lot to corporations in their state, right? Because those are the people that are creating jobs, employing people, paying taxes. So if you can get corporations and businesses to advocate for these people in addition to you, here, encourage FIRST teams to lobby because you guys are really cute and they listen to you. Again, at the local level, school boards, PTA, PTO organizations, you can get those on board. And then as many of you know, I think it's 4 or 5 states now have officially recognized robotics as a sport the same way they recognize other sports. I think it was led by Minnesota, and Minnesota's our greatest advocate for that. And honestly, their person at the Minnesota State High School League is happy to talk to any other state, but really get robotics recognized as the 21st century sport that it is. And I guess that's, so you can sign up for the email list that will soon start emailing people. So and we'll make all the slides go. And this is a picture actually from the National Advocacy Conference a couple years ago, before they were doing work on the dome. But that's, and again, it doesn't have to be the full team that comes to Washington, but bring 4 or 5 team members and you'll get to meet your elected leaders. That's cool. So with that, any questions or thoughts? Or anything? So I'm going to turn it over to Jim to share with you kind of a little more detail on what we're doing. But again, I truly, truly appreciate it. And I think it's kind of cool. The fun part to me is like, I love government in high school. So to me, this is sort of like government connecting with robotics. So what's cooler than that? So thank you all. Thanks so much. I apologize I can't stay, so I'm not walking out on Jim.
No, he's got people to see and things to do. I'm from Washington, and I'm here to help. I really am. And I'm going to cover a lot of ground that Don did, so I may skip over some stuff. But, so what's our goals? And this is, Dean Kamen told me, help make FIRST look like the country. And I think we actually do already, but we can do more in terms of getting underserved communities on board. And that was the goal this is an interesting topic about how local these politics are. Became law in 2015, as Don said. Part A is a well-rounded education opportunities, including improving student engagement in STEM and supporting the participation of students in STEM nonprofit competition, such as robotics. I mean, we actually got that language in there, such as robotics. You're not allowed to name an organization as the beneficiary of federal funding, although that may change again. Congress put a box back on that. At the moment, you're not supposed to. So that's as close as we get to naming first in legislation. Now, you have to understand that there's a funding issue, as Don stated. There's two things. One committee writes the law. They authorize money to be spent. If that passes, then money can be spent if it's appropriated. And President Trump in in the FY18, this year's budget, put $0. The good news is the president's budget, it's a huge thing, goes to the appropriators. They take it and they say, this will make a nice doorstop. Thank you very much, Mr. President. We'll do the appropriation. And that's what happened. They initially appropriated $400 million, not 1.65 billion, but 400 million is not bad. States were getting a fair amount of money relative to their own budgets. In the omnibus, we got it up to 1.1 billion. This is the local story. The chairman of the House Appropriations Committee is Rodney Freehouse. And I worked with the New Jersey regional director folks to get him invited, and he was blown away by what he saw. He fought for this extra money. Now, the president and some of the, I'm trying to be polite now, some of the fiscal conservatives want to cut this bill. I mean, it's passed as law, but there's this process that has been used in 25 years called recession, where they can come and they can go, oh, yeah, you did, we're taking this out. So we may call for help if that appears, and they want to take education money out. Don talked about the community learning centers. It was also zero in the president's budget. It was fully funded in the omnibus. So we need help in Washington, and we'll need it over time because every year we have to get it appropriated again. It's not one appropriation forever. As Don said, join NAC. It's unbelievable to see you guys in Washington talking to the legislators, talking to their staff. By the way, often you can't get a meeting with the legislature. The staffers have much more influence. These legislators are pounded every day with 9 million different things. And the staffers are pretty busy, but they cover selected areas. So the education staffer often will be the decision maker. You just go to the congresswoman and say, vote this way. And they'll say why, and you have to say because, and that's what 9 times out of 10, that's what the legislature will do. If you can't come to Washington, you should reach out to your representatives in Senator's local office, as we did with Congressman Chairman Freelandhouse. The bad news about that is he's not going to run for re-election, so we'll have to find teams from the new appropriations chair. You talk to the state director and the scheduler, because Congress folks are back on the weekends, and that's often when our regional and local competitions are. And get them to come to the competition. Give them a photo op of the competition. They love that. You have media people. Every team, I think, most teams have media people, right? Get your media people to get the press out there when the congresswoman comes and visits and sees the competition, and deliver our message. And you know, what the message should be is what is first need to that's why these two programs, as well as AmeriCorps Booster, is important. The other one that I didn't spend time on because we don't have the precise ask right now that Don referred to is the Perkins CTE, Career Technical Education. That was done, I don't know, 25 years ago, maybe long before that even. And it was meant to teach people how to go into a machine shop and just use an old mechanical machine. Well, not that those aren't important, but most of those jobs now are high tech. Someone sent me a video of a machine shop that was doing a blower for a car, which I come from New York City, so I don't understand anything about cars, for a drag racer. Had to be precisely milled exactly right, and they're punching in this and they're doing the computer. And we're like, this is what Perkins CTE should be doing. And we think the language works, but we struggle. See, there's nothing about STEM in that legislation. This is for old metal bending. It's not for any of this new technology. These are people who have the stake in teaching the old trades, which are, as we know, disappearing. And so we're trying to craft language with Senator Udall from Utah, right? Senator Udall to amend Perkins to make it look like ESSA. Talk about robotics, talk about high tech, and so we can get those fundings and get first named in all the states as what's called a CTSO, which means you get money. Teacher training to become mentors, coaches, money for equipment, and money for courses that relate to STEM. This is the other thing that we work on, and Wyoming is great. Thank you for getting your governor here. We want to get the governors and state education officials to competitions, championships, regional competitions. I mean, I've taken Congress folks around and state officials around, and they're blown away by this. Take them to the pits and talk to the kids. Talk to you guys. Our agenda, it's important to talk to your local people. As Don says, that's where the money is. We've got this $1.1 billion going to the states, which there's a lot of competition, and we're not the only possible funding for it. So you need to get the governors, education folks, and key state legislatures on board. And you meet with them and tell them about first-year teaching. Again, this is about local. What does it mean for you? The needs of the underserved schools where, there's a lot of FRC teams that go into underserved schools and help them create a team and mentor them. And the successes we've had in other states, we've got a lot of case studies, and how important it is to train students for the jobs that are out there, not the jobs that were there and gone. Again, I can't emphasize enough having them come to competition. New Hampshire, of course, we have a little playing field advantage in New Hampshire. That's where Dean is and his company. So we got the state legislature. We actually said we, because I was only on the sidelines cheering them on. But the regional, local folks got the legislature to pass legislation with the intent of having the first team in every New Hampshire school. And I don't know, do you know what how many schools they funded?
What was the exact number that we?
Hundreds.
Hundreds, yeah.
In a small state, hundreds. And it was interesting because more teams applied than they more schools applied than they thought they were going to have applied. And they ran out of money, and I called up and I said, hey, there's this thing called ESSA. Oh, really? The state education director said, we're dedicated to the ESSA money to make up the supplement for our state money, which is funny because that's what the access, I suppose, is supplement state efforts. And we have sample legislation. We should work with you guys. We work with Steve. We should work with Texas. I'll give you some of this example legislation. Again, this is the same thing. Getting the folks who make these decisions in the state to come to competitions. And this is what Don said. Get your corporate sponsors. They listen to businesses. They listen to two people, groups of constituents, and businesses who are constituents or corporations. And again, support state and local funding, supplemented by the federal funding, and reach out to the DC delegation to support appropriations for ESSA, Title 4B, 21st Century School System. 21st, I always get that one messed up. Just say 21st Century Community Learning Center, CCLC. This Washington I can tell them I'll hang around and ask questions.
And to Bree's point, that's been one of the challenges really, and why we haven't had some of the tools that we'd like to have in place is because it is, every state is different and it's constantly changing. You get a new leadership in place and things change again, or a new budget passes and things change again. So hopefully at some point, the toolkit that we provide, to the states and the regions will be almost like a living document or a living toolkit that will constantly be changing, being updated, so.
And as you said, so I have to adapt it to your local situation, which again may change too. I get, I'm gonna get moving on the program, but I'll stick around afterwards if you have any further questions.
Thank you. All right, so next, I'm going to be talking a little bit about the first National Advocacy Conference. So Jim and Don talked a little bit about it earlier, but the first National Advocacy Conference is an annual conference. We're having our 5th one this June that you can sign up for. But we're in Washington, D.C., and we're meeting with our congressmen and our senators, and we have a reception after for our members of Congress to come, and we'll have robots. So it's a really cool event. You get trained on how to really talk to your legislators and all the lingo that Jim was saying, all like the acronyms. So it's a really, really cool conference, and talk a little bit about how it started. So it began with kind of Team Rush. I was on Team Rush. Steve was a mentor for Team Rush. And Steve is also on the school board in Clarkston. He was the school board president at the time, and he was a mentor for Rush, and he had the idea that some of the students that were on Rush could benefit by talking to other board members and then other state representatives and state senators. So it kind of began around, I think, 2008 or 2009, really with just like the state legislature. That's who we focused on. We focused on those relationships. And then in 2009, Steve had the idea from his National School Board Association Advocacy Days. He had the idea to bring some students from Team Rush to DC because, as Don said, these congressmen, these senators, and even their staffers really like to hear those personal stories from their constituents. So he decided to bring some of the high school robotics students to DC, and it kind of just really took off from there. We went for a couple more years just on our own, talking to our own representatives and senators. And then in, I think, 2013, we test ran by inviting a few teams, 1816, Green Machine was one of them. And then in 2014, we opened it up to any team who wanted to come. So that's the first year we did that. We have another team here, Flying Platypi, who've been with us the past couple years, and they're also on our organizing committee. So really, it's been developing. In 2014, we kicked it off. We go to we have a hotel conference center in DC where everyone can stay and then also get trained. So we have really cool speakers for 2 days. And really what we focus on is developing partnerships. When Team Rush went our first year, we really didn't have any connections, but now we have connections with like a lot of organizations like the National PTA, ASCD, which is a curriculum development organization. So really we try to focus in on really developing those relationships. As you'll hear, there's some teams here that have been coming for a lot of years, and the great part about that is that we're really able to foster a connection with these senators and congressmen. So just to overview, for the past 5 years, we've had I think probably somewhere around like 700 participants, 400 meetings. Just this past year, we had 220 people come with us, and we, I think, went to 22% of all the congressional offices. We had around 120 meetings, and there's around 535 offices, if you don't count like some of the territories and stuff. But anyway, so yeah, huge impact. Yeah, so the way it works, Sunday is a training day, Monday is a training day, and then Tuesday we actually go out to the Hill, and so everyone's dressed up, right, having their meetings, and then at 5 o'clock we have a reception in one of the House office buildings, and last year we had a couple of robots, this year we might have a field too, so yeah, so it's really cool because people get the opportunity to see those actual huge robots, and that's the real thing that gets people inspired for sure. So here's some of just overlaying some of the success so far. Jim and Don talk a lot about this, but ESSA Title IV Part A was a big one, and now we're going to try to also work on the Perkins, which is the career technical education side. And then we've had statewide efforts, and as you can see, a lot of states. Texas was noted, but also Minnesota, huge ones in New Jersey, Michigan, Virginia. So a lot of states. And then still, we need your help. We need about 8 more teams to attend the NAC. I think we have somewhere around like 10 signed up so far. But we really want Congress to take first seriously. So to do that, we need the numbers. We want them to know that this is the first national lobby day, so that our program gets credibility, things like that. So far we have teams in California, Maryland, Minnesota, North Carolina, New Jersey, New York, Pennsylvania, Texas, Virginia, who are attending. But those are some of our other states that we're really hoping to get people from. We already have Virginia, obviously. But the big thing with this is that there's so the way Congress works out, there's committees and chairs of the committees like appropriations, and then also the House Education Workforce, and then the Senate. There's another committee. The members who are chairs of those have a lot of power in saying what happens. So that's why we're targeting those specific states. But really, anyone from any state can attend. We're happy to, even if you're from a state that's already represented, working with those teams who are already coming is a big pull for sure. And then this is, again, a picture of the 2017 NAC. Here's our website, it's firstnac.org. So we'll post the slides there. And then I'll take questions at the end, if that's okay, just because we're running a little bit out of time. But next we have the Green Machine. So they're going to talk a little bit about their statewide effort. So thank you.
So we're the Green Machine, and we're from Edina, Minnesota.
So our mission is 1816, the Green Machine transforms culture to celebrate and have a lifelong passion for STEM by opening doors to STEM opportunities, building students into leaders, and inspiring generations.
Yeah, so one of our big goals is to make Christian STEM available to all, and we do this through our National use aptitude, different science, thinking different things. So once we have it introduced like this, and then we'll try, like, making it better.
Well, the other thing was that in the past we had a bill last year as well. I think the thing was is that it was restricted funding STEM in Minnesota or after school education and activities in Minnesota, which is a lot harder to do when it wasn't defined. Like there was no definition for STEM in Minnesota, which is a contributing factor to why certain initiatives haven't worked in the past. If there was much of that.
Yeah, so recently, about 3 weeks ago, our Senator Tina Smith approached us and asked us if we would be the young people that are represented at the Women in STEM Roundtable discussion. So we were there amidst a bunch of different women in different engineering careers or
Well, several other careers where women are traditionally underrepresented. So you had your senators, then you also had people who were in the construction industry, you had people
and like
who were
iron workers too.
right.
Some people like doing very interesting jobs where women are underrepresented, and so we spoke to her about first because she wasn't very familiar with the program, the impacts that it's had on us, and this is being with a new relationship because she is a newer senator for Minnesota. So we're working closely with her to build this relationship so that when we go back to Washington this summer, we can speak with her again. And hopefully she becomes one of our STEM partners, slash heroes, whatever you want to call it. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, we also advocate on the local level pretty extensively. So our annual report to our city council, we broadcast that over 40,000 households, and every year that's a way for us to just connect with our city and representatives at our city so that they know what's going on with the Green Machine every year. We also have long-term relationships with our mayor and our principal and other people who are important within our community. And then we also were instrumental in helping to pass a referendum at our high school, which was for $125 million, and that added a new STEM space for us, as well as new engineering classrooms.
So some future plans are we want to connect with teams who attended MAC, updating regards with legislation and stuff like that. We also want to expand our connections with teams and the city council, local, state, school boards, stuff like that. And then working with champions in legislature, making it, giving a case for direction to where they want to go.
Yeah, so our biggest takeaway from this was definitely that advocacy wasn't something that you do for a year and then if it doesn't work out, then you kind of move on and forget about it. So it's something that you have to keep working at. I mean, definitely for the past, since 2007, like we've for sure been doing advocacy of some sort, whether it's local, state, or federal, and we really try to approach it at all three levels. So that's definitely something that we realized, like even when us four have been on the team, we've seen the failed efforts of, and you have to keep moving forward.
It's kind of just don't be discouraged, and you can't do it alone. So kind of why we all have to team up and band together to get stuff moving. So yeah. Any questions?
Yeah, are you guys, has your team been used for multiple years? I think in 2007.
Yeah, so
Yeah, exactly.
we were founded in 2006, and we've been, like, we worked with Team Rush.
There's a legacy.
Yeah, so.
Okay, I was like, right, so, like you guys have been like, right, our team has, done advocacy, yes, I see. Like at the local level is where we started in 2007, and we spoke to like, and if you were at the governor's Sun conference in 2007, and then we've also met our mayor as well, so that's where it kind of began with expanding.
We're running out of time, so we'll move on to the next one, but thank you all. You guys can so next, real quick, we're going to have Team 2468 talk a little bit about their state advocacy conference. So.
Hey y'all, so I'm Sonia. I'm a junior on 2468, and I'm a chairman's presenter as well for the team.
And I'm Arnold. I'm one of the design and manufacturing leads for our team.
And I'm Jacob. I'm a sophomore on 246. I'm a junior on 2468, and I do scouting and some outreach for our team.
So we're going to tell you a little bit about SACOT, the statewide advocacy organization that we started, and kind of how to start your own advocacy organization. And you've heard a lot about the benefits of a statewide advocacy organization, especially for first students. So this is going to give you a little bit of a rundown on how to start your own first or advocacy conference. Okay. So we have attended NAC for 3 years before we actually started SACOT. We went every year, and we were super impressed with the impact that we could have. We advocated for ESSA actually when we were there. We met with Lamar Smith also, so Dean's bestie, I guess, and talked to him about our experiences in first and how we really enjoyed it and how we want to advocate for it.
Yeah, and this is where we learned, a lot of the advocacy skills that we ended up applying to SACOT. So this is a very important first step for a whole organization.
So our idea was, okay, we know how to advocate at the federal level, but we realized that it's going to be more impactful to advocate at the state level, just because a lot of times government funding at the federal level can often be rerouted to something else. So the analogy that we use all the time is that suppose that the federal level, they allot money for computer science classes. The state has the power to actually reallocate that money and say, okay, we have this money, but we're not going to put it towards computer science, we're going to put it towards football instead. The states have the power to do that.
Yeah, and Texas being a big football state, that we felt that was happening, so we decided to go with the state level and try and see if we can reroute that back into STEM education.
So that's why we created SACOT. You want to go through it?
All right, so SACOT, why it's important, why are we doing what we do? So let's get the why it's called SACOT out quick. It's the STEM Advocacy Conference of Texas. And the reason we call it that is because we're looking to improve students' lives by adding more STEM education to their school programs, and that means stuff like FIRST, that means stuff like their classes as well. And we're hoping by doing this, we improve the future of Texas as a whole, because the more you teach STEM, the more STEM jobs are created. That doesn't only help the economy, but it helps the students personally as well.
And formatting looks weird, but SACOT is basically there to, what FIRST is trying to do is to provide resources for students, especially high school students in FIRST, to go and advocate to their legislators. So those fact sheets, we create the resources for students to go out and have those fact sheets, have those bills written out. We provide those resources for them. So before creating SACOT, we noticed that there were 3 major problems in Texas.
So, you want me to go ahead?
Yeah, so the first
God.
major problem that we found was that there was an increase in STEM jobs in Texas. However, not as many students were able to fill those jobs. We didn't actually have enough students to fill those open jobs. So you can see some numbers here.
Two numbers off the screen.
Yeah, so again, we wanted to help fill that gap. There was a lack of STEM in communities. Now, this is an article, this picture right here is from an article that we found that actually made a huge impact on us. These are students that don't have Wi-Fi at home, so they actually have to come to their school or close to their school with their family smartphone to access their homework. And this is where they would actually do their homework. So there was literally no access to the internet in communities.
And if I can quick, that's really bad, because if you don't have STEM classes in your school and you don't have Wi-Fi in your own home, the odds that you're going to learn anything about any kind of STEM field you might be interested in goes almost completely away, and now you just take away the ability to go into a STEM field that you might otherwise be interested in.
And 3, if we don't have a pipeline of students who don't know about STEM education, then we have no teachers to teach students in the future. A quick tidbit is that 15% of Texas high schools actually has AP Computer Science offered to them. So this is why we found it really important and why we wanted to start SACOT. So how did we start SACOT?
So, the benefits of starting SACOT were we were going to educate state, local, and school governments about the importance of STEM. So we're talking here to you guys already know the importance of STEM, but a lot just don't even know that that's really a big thing, and that STEM is really important in your communities. And that's why we advocate at the state level, because we want them to know, hey, we want you to put money into this. It's really important.
And so we decided to have an annual conference every year. Texas is kind of weird where we have our legislative session is every 2 years. So our annual conference is actually every 2 years when legislation meets, when the legislators vote on bills and things like that. So our annual conference, we invite all our member teams to come and we discuss on how to advocate, just like at NAC, how to advocate to your legislators, that kind of language, agree on kind of platform issues, what is our ask, what do we want to ask them to advocate for. And then at the end of the conference, we set up meetings for them beforehand with their actual legislators, and they go and they talk to their legislators about it.
And like Cameron mentioned earlier, a big part of that is getting numbers. So we invite a whole bunch of teams. We teach a lot of people how to advocate. So that way, we have a whole bunch of people going up. It's a bit more impactful.
So our vision for the next few years is to have 1,000 to 2,000 members. Now, we are actually really close to this goal already. We have about 700 plus registered members of SACOT, that includes about 75 teams across all over Texas. And the next goal or vision is to meet with almost every Texas legislator. We've actually met with quite a few. I myself have met with, I think, 5 or 6 from across the state, and that was only in like the last conference, which was one day.
Yeah. During our our two conferences, we've met with 40 legislators already just because of the amount of teams that we had attending. So we're going to skip this. So our structure, I know a lot of y'all are hearing this and you might want to implement this within your own teams, within your own state. So how we are structured is we have subcommittees. We are all on the executive committee of SACOT, so I'm the membership coordinator for the organization, Jake's our PR person, and Arnav deals with our website. And we are also sponsored by all these organizations right here. The benefit with an advocacy organization is it doesn't cost a lot of money. It doesn't cost money to go and call your legislator. It doesn't cost money to go and talk to them. Maybe gas money is the biggest thing that you would have to pay for to drive to your capital. And it's really easy to get funding from organizations like FIRST. We're actually sponsored by FIRST in Texas as well as VEX to hold our annual conferences, and we had leftover money from our conferences. So it's something that it doesn't cost a lot for teams to actually start organizations in their own states. Okay.
So our membership hierarchy goes something like this. So the president is the head of the executive committee, along with a special advisor, which is usually a mentor. And then we have the rest of the executive committee, which is made up of website, PR, membership, et cetera. And then we have, right under them, founding teams. Now, founding teams, well, we had a few founding teams, and they came to our founding conference, which was our first conference, where we actually kind of tested the water to see what Texas legislators thought of SACOT, which we got a lot of positive feedback for.
Basically, when we started SACOT, we realized that we as an individual team could not do it alone. There's power in numbers, and in order to create a bigger voice, we needed to get other teams on board. So we decided to contact the strongest FIRST teams that are also in Texas, and we said, hey, this is what we want to start, and we need your help to do it. And those teams are our founding teams. And just like NAC inviting their initial teams to come help them out, we did the same thing at the state level. And then after we got our founding teams, we had them invite our members, which is the rest of FIRST teams that are in Texas. You want to talk a little bit?
So these are the current website features. These are just some buzz things that we created so that we could keep our members involved in our website. Our website is our primary resource that we use to communicate with all of our members. And this is what we use to keep them engaged. We have polls on our website. We have a little game with points and team points and stuff like that. The polls actually are really cool because we can actually ask our members a question to gather data that we can then bring to, let's say, our state legislator, and
And our website also has all the resources. We've built this really great database where you can actually click a button to find your own legislator based on your zip code. So I would highly suggest you guys check that out, saycot.org, and see the kind of resources that we have. And we have legislative conferences, like we said. So we invite panelists. If you can see here, we actually have kind of all tiers of the kind of advocacy process. This right here is our superintendent of our school district. We have somebody from the corporate world who kind of is advocating for First in Texas. Donna Howard there, she's our district representative. And then we have a staffer from one of the major congressmen in Texas. So basically, as you can see, it's a really collaborative. We have a lot of work sessions, a lot of ways for, if you see Texas Torque, if you guys know 1477, they're one of our founding teams. They're in that picture, collaborating, basically talking about the platforms that they wanted to discuss to their legislators. And as you can see here, at the end of the conference, they go and talk to the legislators in the end. And both of these conferences that we held were actually at the Austin State Capitol, free of charge, because we talked to Donna Howard, our district representative, and she loved the idea, and she sponsored the room for us. So it was super convenient. People really get on board. Just like Mr. Berger said, it's not something that people are opposed to.
And a big part of the conference is, like you said before, you're teaching them to advocate, but you're also getting them excited. If you can get a lot of people at your conference excited, there's a chance they might, with their own teams, on their own time, go and do exactly what you taught them to do here on multiple other occasions.
So our motto is giving Texas high school students a voice in their STEM education. We don't have time for the video, but it's all on our website. And our daily functions of SACOT. So a lot of times after the conferences, it's hard to keep teams engaged, especially with build season, and a lot of people get busy. But these are the kind of things that we do on a daily basis that keep people engaged.
So these are two of our fairly small initiatives. These are usually during our off years when the legislative session is not actually active. So we have SACOT on the Clock, which is 10 minutes a month, where teams just sit down and do something for 10 minutes, SACOT related. For example, email your representative, or invite your representative to your local
Regional,
tournament or
yeah.
regional. And so we actually had several
SACOT on the
senators
Clock.
actually come to regionals, and it was really cool because they were blown away by the awesome stuff that we could do with robots. And then we, of course, have SACOT on Tour.
Which we'll explain.
Yeah.
I mean, this is something very little, but when you're developing an organization, there's a lot of things that go into it. And this is kind of the little things. Branding, making sure you have a set, as you can tell, we have color codes, we have fonts for everything. All our handouts are collateral, which, speaking of, if we have collateral on the organization and we have pins, so if y'all want to get that later. Social media presence is a big thing. As you can see, we have an Instagram, a Twitter. It's how you get information out nowadays, and it's extremely vital to doing this stuff. And expansion to other states. So when we developed the SACOT model, we knew that it was successful. And once we started getting teams on board, we found that, okay, we are actually making an impact, and other teams wanted to adopt the same model. So we actually spread our SACOT model to other states. The first of which was FACTA in Arizona. Our president, Philip Liu, if you guys want to talk to him later in our pit, he's extremely knowledgeable about SACOT. He's our president. He actually was invited to be a keynote at FACTA, the first advocacy conference for technology in Arizona. And so they just started their own SACOT in Arizona, and the development of PACT in Pennsylvania, the Pennsylvania Advocacy Conference of Technology. So it's really cool to see this model that we created go to other states, and other states are adopting this.
So this has become a big part now that we've seen that other teams want to adopt the same idea. We want to actively pursue getting other states to join and do this same thing. So we created SACOT in the Box, which is a quick handout that outlines the process that we took to create SACOT and how we do a lot of the stuff we do. And we understand that it's going to be different for each state. So it is
we have
for you.
physical copies of
We'd be
it.
happy to give you guys information.
And these are all the states that the red states that don't have the SACOT logo in it are the ones that we've already contacted about getting their own advocacy organizations. As you can see, SACOT in Texas, PACT in Pennsylvania, FACTA in Arizona, and we're actually talking to the citrus circuits in California to start their own advocacy organization there as well. And SACOT on tour. So what do we do during our even years? So Texas legislation meets every odd year, so what do we do in the even years? It's not like they're going to vote on any bills then. So we decided to do SACOT on tour.
So one of the big things you heard earlier was that you want to get underserved communities involved in what you're doing because we want to make First look like the country. So this was our initiative to do that. So the idea of SACOT on Tour was to bring our presentation and some robots and some fun stuff to do and take it around to underserved communities and just show it to kids to get them interested in STEM. Because like I said earlier, a lot of people don't even know that there's STEM in their community. And when there isn't, they don't know that it's even a job. So that's the idea here. So we're getting them excited, we're letting them play with robots, and we're teaching them what they could do to get their STEM education online.
And the most important part of this is that we invite the legislator of that district to come and see this event happening and see the kids' joy and see, oh my gosh, they've never been exposed to this. What if they were before? And yeah, that is SACOT in a box, kind of SACOT in a little bit of a presentation.
Thank you guys so much.
Yeah, I don't know if we have,
Yeah, we'll have time for questions at the end,
okay,
so
here you go.
come back. All right, so just to wrap up a little bit, here are some of the contacts that you all can have, and then if you have any questions for any of us, and then I'll also add Carrie's information and email when we upload it to the website. But then, again, our website that we'll have the slides on will be firstnac.org, so you can also go there to register for the National Advocacy Conference as well. Yeah. Yeah, so for this year's NAC, it's on June 24th, 25th, and 26th. So it's a Sunday through Tuesday. Yeah. Yeah, so it's usually at the end of June. We try to do it after most schools get out of school, but yeah. Okay, so now we can take any questions for any of them. So for 2468, for Jim, for Carrie, for me. Yeah, you had a question.